I just got a neat book from Amazon that was written in 1962 called Patriotic Gore, G-O-R-E. The vice president wasn't around back then. Patriotic Gore, and it's an analysis of literature from the Civil War with very interesting insights. It was based on the original writings of statesmen and women who participated in it. One of the points that it makes that is fascinating is that as we moved through the late 1850s, 1857, 58, the struggle over slavery changed from a public policy debate and ultimately a territorial debate as to whether it should be allowed in new territories into a religious and almost a Marxist debate, and acquired gravitas and tentacles that tapped into a whole range of deep feelings on both sides of the Continental Divide. From the North's point of view, slavery became a religious cause. It became as religious as any revival, and tapped directly into the abolitionist movement, which tapped directly into a spiritual reawakening that was going on throughout the United States. Uncle Tom's Cabin was the book by Harriet Beecher Stowe was probably the catalyst of that. But very quickly, extreme spirituality and dedicated religiosity became synonymous with abolition. And abolition, which had been a secular issue, a legal issue, and a territorial issue, morphed into a spiritual issue. This was accentuated by the Fugitive Slave Act, that for the first time required the North to act in a complicitous way with Southern slavery, namely to turn runaways back to their owners, and it made it a crime not to do so. So the North now would have to do more than just passively watch slavery in the South. It had to become an active participant of it. And of course the Dred Scott decision in 1857 saying that there is no rights that blacks have that whites are obliged to recognize made it a very clear-cut choice. But it was the spiritual and religious dimension that really led the North into the war. That's what animated John Brown and the Kansas and Nebraska wars. Meanwhile, in the South, the pro-slavery position became closely linked to the urban reformist populist agenda that emerged later in the century as the populist agenda. The Southerners were talking about the exploitation of workers in the North, about the fact that they were paid bad wages, that they could be fired at a moment's notice, that if they were injured on the job, it was their own tough luck, that they could be laid off without any compensation at all, that when they got old and couldn't work, they were just cut loose, and there were no old age pensions. Bismarck in Germany in 1848 had spawned a tremendous agenda of social welfare programs that he fed to the German people as an alternative to democracy. And keep the Kaiser in charge, but you can get your goodies. And the Southerners took the goodie argument and said, we're providing these to our slaves. They stay with us even when they're old and sick until they die. When they're too old to work, we take care of them, we feed them, we take care of their children, we provide, in effect, daycare. And if they're injured, we continue to pay them. And we have an obligation to them that the Northern industrialists don't have. And they really anticipated the arguments that were brought up by the progressives in the populist era, and then by Theodore Roosevelt, Al Smith, FDR, and on into Lyndon Johnson and John Kennedy, about the benefits for workers and protections for workers, and cited the absence of these in the North as justification for slavery. So with the Northern point of view firmly anchored in its spiritual worldview, and the Southern thing anchored in its economic worldview, slavery dug in on both sides so that it became what Seward called an irrepressible conflict. Thanks for watching.